I mean, as you know, I'm working on sort of an update on this whole banking scandal of 2014, and a lot has obviously happened in recent months. And I'm just wondering, I mean, it's actually interesting because I saw that one of the things you negotiated with the Swiss representatives here today was cooperation in this defrauded assets program.
Yes.
And I was wondering, is that linked to this scandal at all, or is this
It's including because during the crisis of banking crisis that you know, which were finalized. I mean, the final step was in 2014 because the entire banking fraud took years. Right. It's not about the November 2014 or before. It took time. So the fraud was a continuous process, more intense in 2014, but before. And of course, when we have now the last information from Kroll company is this an estimation of the fraud itself. It's not 1 billion, it's 600 million. And we have pretty understanding where they are located, at least as a preliminary information. Some of the assets are located in Moldova, and we have the capacity and institutions to take care of those in Moldova. Although still a very difficult procedure, but some of other assets are located outside of the country. And we can work, of course, with foreign lawyers and foreign companies to recover the assets, but that takes also quite huge resources in terms of money. And to make it easier and simplify procedure of the recovery, including inside of the country, plus to have a good investigative body from for economic crimes, for frauds like this, but not especially this, we came with an idea in the discussions with Basel Institute for International Institute for Recovery of the Assets. We came with an idea to work on a legislation, a strategy, a legislation, and then to set up even a special unit in Moldova which will deal with recovery of the assets. Mm-hmm. And we passed a legislation. Now there is a subsidiary legislation that we are working on, and very soon we'll get in the parliament already from the government some proposals of the law when effectively we set up this unit. Switzerland has a very good experience generally in the banking area, but especially in recovering the assets and financial investigation, or the investigation of the financial crimes. And that's something that we need. It came, of course, as the base from the fraud that we had, but generally a country like Moldova, which also we have still sensible, weak and sensible industry, banking, and in the region, it's not only about Moldova, we see the examples in Ukraine. We need an assistance, a good assistance and support in knowledge and expertise from countries like Switzerland in everything which means fraud investigation and recovering of the assets. And therefore, the first step is done, the legislation is in place. Now the second one is about setting up the unit properly, train those people, work on procedures, and they can already be enforcing their duties.
And that will also involve Swiss partners.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope we will get all the assistance and support that we need, and also not only on the just specifically on the fraud assets, but when we speak about the investigation, it's not only about getting good lessons, but maybe also to try to cooperate with the Swiss authorities in recovering some of the frauds that we're talking about.
Because some of them may have ended up here as well.
Not may, but definitely yes, because we have a preliminary report from Kroll some preliminary findings where they show that Switzerland is one of the jurisdictions which were used or frauds end up here for the beneficiary of some ultimate beneficiaries that we will it will be revealed by Kroll at certain point.
And I mean, the Russian laundromat investigation revealed that as well, right?
That's another story. That's a different story than the fraud that we are talking about. But also from the investigation, it was revealed that some of the jurisdiction, including Switzerland, was used for money laundering through Moldova. I'm not saying that Switzerland was used for money laundering, but the benefits or the final product could end up also here, an acquisition of the assets or on a bank accounts, whatever we know, because now, whatever we will find, because now everything which relates to laundromat case, it's still under investigation. Mm-hmm. And it's a common work between our agencies and foreign agencies, including agencies like FBI or others.
Mm-hmm. And are there any estimates of how much of these 600 millions ended up in Switzerland? Are there any numbers on that? Or no?
I might be wrong in figures, but as I remember from the report which came in the meeting with representatives of Kroll, we are talking around about maybe 40-50 million. Not so much, but still 40-50 million, because the biggest part went through Cyprus, more than 100 of millions. And the problem with Cyprus is that they don't give information. They were excusing themselves for the lack of a cooperation memorandum between the central banks. It took like a year to discuss and to figure out at the end that they come with such a request to have a memorandum in place. Last November last year, it was signed such a memorandum between Central Bank of Moldova and Central Bank of Cyprus. But still from November until today, that's already June, we're talking about like 7-8 months, we did not get any information from Cyprus, not yet. And we're not talking about the money which could end up in Cyprus. They could go through Cyprus to other jurisdictions, so we would like to trace them where they went. So Kroll showed couple of jurisdictions where they have results in tracing the funds, and some of the jurisdictions like Cyprus where they cannot get in, and they ask us as well as on the political level and interstate tools to use, and to ask either our colleagues at Brussels at the level of European delegation, European Union, IMF, World Bank, and other institutions to use to put a bit pressure on the Cyprus so they can reveal the information. It's about Switzerland. Most probably our investigators will work with prosecutors in Switzerland to get information about disclosing the information related to the assets, owners of the assets, maybe bank accounts from the banks, the information to see either money stays here or they went through Switzerland to other places, but it's important to see what's the destination of those 40-50 million.
Let's talk a little bit more about Kroll and related issues, because I have to say, I followed this very closely in 2015 and early 2016. Then I sort of didn't follow that close, and now I started again in the last few months. And I was surprised how many things have happened in recent months. Because in 2015, I had a distinctive impression that there were a lot of also political obstacles within Moldova in order to clear this up. And I mean, you, I think, know this as well, because I mean, you published the Kroll report, even though it was supposed to stay secret. So, I mean, tell me, maybe I would be interested in knowing a little bit more on like what those factors were back then, and maybe also if and to what extent this has changed now.
The first report and the first involvement of Kroll was only for a specific scope of work, was scoping. Yes, it's to get all the information, to have a clear or at least to try to have a clear view of what happened. It was not about the investigation itself. So that first task and the first report was scoping. And it was such a high expectation in the society to find the way. And at a certain point, there were many speculations against Kroll, that Kroll is hiding something, or the authorities, they try to, people did not really understand that this is not a real report, that they will see there are people who committed the fraud, or those benefiting the fraud, from the fraud. But there were many speculations, and already were somehow putting in danger further investigation. Therefore, at that time, I have decided, because I had access to a report, and together with the governor at that time of central bank, we asked Kroll to give us permission to publish the report. They say no, because that's what they have to reply, because there were a non-disclosure agreement in place, and that's their professional ethic. They could not say, of course, yes. Also, we were trying to argue that it's a public pressure in the society. It's really a need to give information. It's not about hiding something, because we would be then accused that we try to hide. Sure. Although we did not have anything to hide, and therefore took the decision just to publish fully in the entire integrity the report. I did not have afterwards any communication with Kroll. Then, like a month ago, last meeting we had with Kroll, representatives, central bank governor and the government of Moldova, prime minister and other ministers, to discuss already on the second step. But I think at that time I took a proper decision, because everybody was waiting and had expectations to see something, and they were already blaming us and Kroll, and it was already a matter of reputation. It brought an idea of what happened, also did not see proper the schemes, the structure of the fraud, people who were benefiting and who were involved. Then, of course, central bank went for the second stage already of cooperation with Kroll. Kroll came in consortium with a legal company, Jackson Steps or something like Johnson and Steps. Never mind, it's an American company, and they came already for the second stage, meaning investigation, tracing funds, identifying the assets, location, and starting the procedure of recovering the trusts, meaning first freezing the assets and then procedure of the recovery. Today they advanced quite well in many jurisdictions, not of them, I was giving you an example of Cyprus, but they are not ready yet to produce the second report, because the information is still coming, and they don't want to. We could ask them, okay, draw the line, finish here, give us the report. But the information comes every day, something new is coming. And when some of the jurisdictions open, like Cyprus, maybe new facts will come in the scheme, and they could develop more. So we agreed that they continue to work for the second report, the investigation properly, and then when time comes, they will close draw the line, draft the report, and deliver the report to us, and together we will decide how we proceed with communication, maybe to expose to public. But in the meantime, before the second report is ready, to start already think about a recovery strategy, and also with some actions. Because in some of the jurisdictions there is a possibility to move already with legal cases in jurisdictions maybe including even Switzerland, UK, Hong Kong, Austria, or United States. United States can help a lot because it's about dollars, and then they can work very easy with the SWIFTs and other information, other tools to trace the funds. So they will move on with delivering a strategy. The strategy will be approved, and then in 1, maximum 2 months, the legal actions will start for freezing the assets, recovering the assets where they are seen. That's outside of the country. Inside of the country, prosecutors went quite well in investigation. There are more than 40 criminal cases grouped in, I would say, in some groups. For example, there is a Filat group of cases, Shore group, Gachkevich, which is the former head of a bank, Savvy Bank, Platon group, Luchinsky group. So they're like groups of cases that you can identify. And behind each group, there are criminal cases. There are people under the investigation, some of them already condemned, like Mr. Filat or like Mr. Platon. And there are assets. There are damages estimated already, and also assets frozen, which the next step would be to start selling the assets and recovering for the assets for the country. And we speak about an estimation of, in Moldovan lei, more than $1 billion of Moldovan lei assets frozen, but that's nominal value. If we speak about market value, that's more than 3 billion Moldovan lei, which is around, let's say, 150 million of dollars. That's one side, criminal cases, and people already under the investigation, some of them convicted. And there is another way of recovery, that through the liquidation of the banks, because banks has had assets acquired also through fraud schemes, like cars, offices, computers, furniture, wherever, and assets we are also estimating then something more than 1.5 billion of Moldovan lei, which is again maybe around $50 million. So altogether, we can recover from the country only around 250 million, and from outside of the country, the entire fraud value is close to 400. But how much we recover, it's difficult to say. That's about the fraud in the banking sector, and that's different than Landromat.
But I mean, this scandal, of course, I mean, it created a lot of pressure also from the outside, from the European Union, from countries like Romania that also supported you bilaterally. So I mean, did Moldova need this outside pressure in order to start cleaning up?
Well, it's difficult to say. Now we had this pressure, and we still have the pressure. But at the same time, I see political will inside of the country, even without this pressure, because everybody is interested to see. First of all, everybody would like to see the results of investigations, people put behind the bars and convicted, and assets being recovered, and like this cleaned the budget debt. Second, I see quite good progress in investigation and work of the prosecutors. Also takes time at the court, because on one side you have prosecutors moving with investigations and bringing case to the court, and then takes time with the court, with working with all the parties involved, and the lawyers and the prosecutors and those people under investigation. Then you have the first instance court, then you go for the appeal, and then you have Supreme Court. So this takes time before you have a final irrevocable decision. Then you can then enforce, sell the assets, and recover the assets. So I see on the other side, on one side, I see the political will. Everybody is interested to move on. Second, I see quite good actions from the prosecutors and already some decisions of the court. And I see on another side, I see outside how how investigation goes on with Kroll and what obstacles they have from other jurisdiction. So either we have or not the pressure from outside, but in the country we see a progress. It takes time. Nobody said that this so-called 1 billion fraud will be recovered in 1 year or 2 years. Even the legal actions outside of the country will take years, and irrespective of the jurisdictions, including Switzerland. You have to bring proofs, you have to go to the court, and it takes time.
But at the same time, I mean, it's enormously damaged the entire pro-Western political elite, right? And it's also damaged your party as well. I mean, you're right now, I think, in polls around 6, 7 single digits, and at the same time, you have socialists at 35%.
Yes.
So, I mean, is that unjustified that this like hit the pro-Western parties?
No, it's not unjustified. It's justified. It's justified, and we have to recognize the mismanagement of the problem, of the crisis. People involved in the management and in leading some of the institutions and the procedures could take actions before, could take actions a bit earlier than took actions at that specific time. I remember when I became Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Economy in July 2014. I heard for the first time about the issue with the banking industry in August during a meeting of the Financial Stability Committee where I was a member. And finding what I heard there, it was clear that it's a crisis. And this crisis will only evolve and will only be developed if we don't take actions. It was very dangerous because on one side we did not have a proper experience on how to manage a proper crisis. On the other side, we could see the influence and that someone or some countries or someone would take advantage of this crisis to switch, to turn the country on a different side. Exactly. We saw the experience of crisis in Bulgaria, where one day, in one morning, 10,000 SMSs were sent with information about crisis at one bank, and then afterwards the entire banking system collapsed. And so in September, I went with a delegation with Minister of Finance and Governor at the IMF meeting IMF in Washington, different missions and experts, and they were helping us in September to work, I mean not us speaking like the central bank, with IMF to work on a contingency plan, because we did not have even something like this. Contingency plan meaning plan A, plan B, plan C, what if happens this, you do that, if happens that, and it already came end of September, beginning of October. So October was the month of estimations and work, and in November already actions were taken. But my question was, why before July, August, actions were not taken in the spring or February or March? As I understand, some of the people in the government already knew from February that something is wrong.
And many people warned already 1 or 2 years.
I found in August. But how about others before, much before, which they knew that something is wrong and developing? If more in advance to take actions, less damage was. Definitely. Because when I found in August, maybe the whole was 6 billion, let's say. In September it came 7, and in October already it was 8 or 9 billion. So it was growing and growing and growing, and at a certain point central bank said, enough. Now we have contingency, now we have guarantees, now we have legislation in place, because we did not have even legislation. We did not have a legislation of banking resolution. So central bank could come either with spatial supervision, which was hopeless, or with spatial administration, which were the end of spatial administration was bankruptcy. Nothing in between. You did not have bridge bank, you did not have anything else as notions in the legislation. So we did not have legislation. Therefore, the government came only in September with a special procedure of confidence vote, engaging the responsibility in the parliament which was leaving already just before elections. And only in September we came with a special legislation to give powers to central bank to interfere. And it did in November. So not being prepared from a legislative point of view, not being prepared from an expertise point of view, no contingency plan. Nothing was really prepared during earlier in 2014 to have intervention and to interfere at when the damage could be less. I'm not blaming anybody. I just saw witnessing how weak we were as institutions to take actions, unfortunately.
And of course, some politicians also were involved, right? I mean, we've mostly heard from the
to understand better the involvement, the main bank was saving bank called Banca di Economia. Right. This is a state bank. The state bank is managed by state. So you have the board of directors, and you have president. The president is appointed through the General Assembly, the proposal of the board. In the board, which is an important body to take executive decisions, you have people from different ministries representing their ministers. The majority of those ministers were from Minister of Finance, 2 people, Minister of Economy, 1 person, Minister of Finance 2, Chancellery of the government, another 2 people maybe. So if you take the majority of those in the board were representatives from 1 party, Liberal Democratic Party, which were led by Mr. Filat. I'm not saying that those people are primarily involved, but the bank was managed by institutions which were under the Liberal Democratic Party. And this was quite a problem. And of course, politicians were involved, maybe not directly in fraud. Maybe they were not involved in the process of stealing money from the bank. But when you are a politician and you pick up the phone and you call the president of the bank to tell him, please help my friend or help my relative or help that person, give him a loan and forget about compliance, forget about mortgage, forget about the guarantees, you are already actually acting as fraudulently as politician. Because this is a state bank and you have a perception that everything is allowed, which is not. This is a very sensitive industry. And it's really, unfortunately, there were politicians involved directly or indirectly in the entire scheme of fraud.
And I mean, but if we're talking, I know that you probably have to go soon. If we talk about now regaining the trust of the population, especially a third-party view, I mean, obviously, Mr. Blachowniuk is not very uncontroversial either, right? I mean, a lot of people think that he's an intransparent person. He's a hard person to get to also as a press representative. It's impossible to talk to him, for example. Isn't that also a problem that you have a person like that who is obviously so powerful, who controls so much in Moldova, and when people are so distrustful of what you do now?
I think the biggest problem, which I also communicate personally to him, is that he is not more involved in public speech and public exposure, because that will make that all the question marks and all this enigma to fall. And people would see in him what he really is, what person, what human being he, how he thinks, what he acts, and how good manager he is. But at the same time, starting from last January, for the first time in the history, we took full responsibility of governing the country. So if to blame us for something, is to blame us for the mistakes that we do starting from January last year until today, because that now we took the full responsibility. Now we have the leading role in the majority in the parliament, and I am as a speaker fully responsible for what is done in the parliament, and my colleague Pavel Filip as prime minister and the key ministers, and of course the party and the leaders of the party as a ruling party. We took fully the responsibility, and we are accountable fully for the results or for the failures in the country. And when people could speculate on different reasons, but I will only give an example. If we managed to increase the revenue from the custom authority, from the custom operations, in a period of time when we have less exports, less imports, because that's the revenue coming from imports, custom duty and VAT. When we have less imports and we have more revenues of almost 30%, and we reach this result by fighting against criminal schemes at the custom, by fighting against corruption. If we have succeeded to increase collection in the taxation, generally the tax authority, also by fighting against corruption. If by us taking the lead and the main responsibility for governing the country, we bring efficiency in what we do in the government, then we should look for the results and not for the speculations. Yes, maybe there are many question marks about me and my colleagues, but I would prefer to be judged and assessed based on the results that we deliver. We speak less than others before, but we do more, and that's seen in the results. Nobody believed that in a very short period of time last year we will manage to negotiate, to accomplish all the prior actions and to get IMF memorandum. Nobody believed, including people from IMF. They did not believe. But we have managed. We have succeeded. And we would like to be judged and assessed based on the results. We have a growth in the economy last year and this year, comparing to a disaster in the economy we had in 2015, which means we recovered. And you cannot recover if you are a bad manager or you have criminal schemes in place. That will not work, which means that on one side we fight against corruption, we fight against the frauds, we bring efficiency in the governing. So at the end of the day, we would like to be judged for what we do. And I hope that we have still enough time, almost a year and a bit of months before the next parliamentary elections, by delivering to people results to gain trust and confidence from population.
And this also means that you're strictly against the kind of course that the socialists are trying to get at.
Yes, because the socialists, what they do, they took an advantage from this disappointment from population towards our mistakes of the previous governments, and now they play on that unhappiness of people by bringing geopolitical issues, like to turn the country from a European Union integration to another integration, being against European Union, which everybody understands, including them, including President Dodon. They understand that the best model for development is European Union model and not Euro-Asian one. But politically, they believe they can gain political capital and dividends by playing this geopolitical card, which is, from my point of view, very bad, and it only brings negative future and negative effect for the country. We should all focus for development, and when we speak about development, and the best model for transforming in a good way the country is to follow a model which we believe today, and we see today, we witness today, the best one is European Union model. well, Switzerland also is a very good model, but takes for us hundreds of years, and it's a completely different story. We would like to be like Switzerland, of course, but for us it would be much easier and faster to implement the association agreement with what we have with the European Union. It's for trade, it's for infrastructure, it's for a rule of law and strong institutions.
With the hope of becoming a EU member at some point.
At some point. The most important that we reach that level when we become eligible to become members in the future member state of European Union. That still long time, long way to be there, but manageable.